Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Owen McCarthy.
Thank you to the Vice President of Research for that kind introduction. I'm honored to be your keynote speaker today for the Student Research Symposium and as part of Maine Impact Week. I'm especially honored because as a native of small-town Maine, the University of Maine was the single biggest influence on my life and continues to be. It has given me the foundation to tackle the world. It is also very humbling to be here. As I walked around just before this moment, viewing the depth, caliber, and breadth of the important research taking place here by you, my fellow Black Bears. Before I begin my remarks, I have to say, when Cody originally asked me to speak, he assigned me a 30-minute time slot, which my reaction was exactly the same as the people in the back who checked their watch. And inspired by the campus's adoption of the 3-minute thesis, I lobbied for less time and will only be up here for 15 minutes today. But I do want to borrow 30 seconds before I begin to thank President Hunter and the rest of the campus leadership who over the last few years have led the university to many, many achievements, which includes record enrollments, the largest single legislative appropriation increase in UMS history, attracting many more out-of-state students, an 8-figure donation for the Engineering, Education, and Design Center, and I can continue, but to summarize, it has been remarkable and important. Important for the state as we battle demographic and economic challenges, especially as Maine's only research university with 72% of PhDs granted, 90% of engineers, and students and professors like you. We need to thrive. And under the leadership of President Susan Hunter, thrive we have. So what am I going to talk about today? Throughout my career, I've had the good fortune of working with many researchers, scientists, and engineers that I have respected, and from them I've learned a great deal about what it takes to be a science-based leader. Therefore, I'm going to focus my remarks on just that, what I've learned from those that have excelled, key characteristics they've had in common, and how you should think about them as you all become or continue to be leaders in your own right. A little more about me. What wasn't in my introduction is I grew up in Patton, Maine, approximately 100 miles north of here, in the woods, a first-generation college student who came to UMaine and graduated with a biological engineering degree, which, as an aside, I understand has now been rebranded biomedical engineering, so if someone can let me know what happens when your major is rebranded after this talk, that would be appreciated. And if I could sum up all of my career since leaving UMaine, every single step has been working to translate science and research into real-world applications. Currently, I do that as president and co-founder of MedRhythms, a Maine-based startup who's taking clinical and neuroscience research of music and neurologic recovery to build a digital therapeutics company that uses sensors, artificial intelligence, and music to create evidence-based, FDA-approved, reimbursed digital interventions to improve and measure walking following neuroinjury and disease. Before MedRhythms, I helped start a 3D printing of electronics company called Voxelate, which launched based on material science research from Jennifer Lewis' lab at Harvard University. I advised during the creation of SoftRegen, a silk-based biomaterials company that launched out of David Kaplan's lab at Tufts. I've worked with teams from MIT in water treatment, teams from George Church's gene therapy lab at Harvard, and recently began working with UMaine's own Howell Lab on an innovative project, to name a few. And through this journey, I have learned that those that excelled and stood out in science and research, these were not always the smartest people, but some were obviously smart. They weren't always the most outgoing, not always the charismatic leader that culture portrays, but as I reflect on each of these people, they all shared at least 4 very distinct traits. The first trait is that exceptional people committed to excellence. And you may be thinking, Owen, 1, that is obvious, and 2, you use excellence to describe exceptional, which I would reply and say it's more nuanced than that. It's your definition of excellence that shapes your perspective on what you need to achieve. I actually learned my most vivid lesson on defining excellence here at UMaine. during my sophomore year, actually in Professor Wheeler's, who's over here, CHB 200 class. It was 1/4 away through the semester, and Professor Wheeler was moving around the room handing back the first graded test. I received it in my hands, turned it over, looked at it. I got a 92. It felt good. It was a tough class, tough test. And then Professor Wheeler looked at me. I'm not sure, he probably doesn't remember this, but with his piercing eyes, and said 5 words. I expected better from you. These words stick with me today. I had done fine, but in this setting, Professor Wheeler had set perfection as excellence. And side note, for the benefit of the current students, Dr. Wheeler, I'm not encouraging you to get even more strict or demanding. Keep doing what you're doing. Though in classes, excellence is easy to grasp and understand what it looks like. But when you leave these walls, or the walls of the university, when you are doing research, when you are building organizations, it is much harder to know how to define success. So how can you start? Really, what you want to do is find the world's best, no matter your field or your pursuits, the gold standard. Find out how to get there, how they got there. That is your benchmark. That is what you work towards. It doesn't need to be immediate. You will have growing pains. And for those of you that think in graphs, which I know a lot of you do, if you don't know what excellence is in your pursuit, hard work can still bring you to the top of your curve. But unless you're lucky to be on the right graph, you'll hit a local maximum. You won't know where you need to travel to hit the global maximum. So great science-based leaders know where the global maximum resides. What I've also observed is they don't let outcomes change their process. Good fortune happens to all of us, and sometimes discoveries are made by accident. For example, a radar engineer invented the microwave. A DuPont chemist focused on refrigeration discovered Teflon, and 3M was striving to create a strong adhesive when they invented the Post-it. In each of these situations, these people achieved a great outcome that we all could be proud of. However, good fortune is more likely to happen to those that create a process that increases the odds of a successful outcome. Last time I made this speech, I used a video clip, which I'm going to attempt to explain, from the Batman movie Dark Knight Rises. This is a clip where Batman faces off against the villain Bane in the sewers of Gotham City. He confronts him and the fight breaks out. Batman is no match for Bane. Every punch is caught and eventually Batman is defeated, just for the scene. He comes back later. As it's clear that the hero doesn't stand a chance, the villain Bane said something that has resonated with me. Victory has defeated you. Like Batman, we can all too often get caught up in our own accomplishments. We celebrate the fact we have great GPAs, or our research gets funded, or we file the patent, or we win an award. We then feel entitled to it. We forget that those measures are effects, not causes. The causes were the combination of the process you took to get there, and sometimes sheer luck. This will play out through your life. For example, it has been shown that founders of companies that were successful once actually increase their chance of failure in their second company, because they lose their sense of humility, hustle, and hard work. The process you design needs to be individualized to the scenario you're in, which that could be a whole nother keynote, so we won't get into that completely, but it should combine a sense of urgency, consistency, hard work, goal setting, and grit. I was recently reading a post from venture capitalist Fred Wilson, who spoke about his process. And he said, if there's one word I use to describe my secret to success, it would be tenacity. I just put my mind to something, and I grind on it. I'm not the smartest in the room. I'm not the most organized person. I don't manage people well, so I have a ton of weaknesses. But my superpower is that I wake up with a ton of energy and apply it to everything I'm working on, and keep doing that until I get an acceptable outcome. And for you, your past successes should not define you. Your process should define you. I'm going to introduce the last two qualities via this excerpt from one of my classes at business school called Commercializing Science, describing MIT professor Bob Langer. So listen carefully to see if you can pull out these two qualities. Bob Langer was educated as a chemical engineer, blazed a research path that took him outside of his field of expertise. While he received his PhD in chemical engineering at MIT, When he began his career as a professor, he was placed in the School of Sciences Applied Biological Science Department with an eclectic mix of professors. Through this and other experiences, he built expertise and connections in other science, engineering, and medical disciplines. His network included research collaborators, chemists, material scientists, surgeons, investors, and lawyers. As he built his lab, he sought out people from different backgrounds, but all of them had to want to work on high-impact, high-risk problems, which requires an environment that is collaborative. As he said, they had to be able to get along well with others in the lab and have good personal chemistry. Similarly, as one of his graduate students suggested, people come here because they want to work with people from different disciplines. At the lab level, Bob had created a collaborative environment. And what has been the result for the Langer Lab? Well, arguably, they're one of the most successful groups in terms of translational research in our generation. The credentials are astonishing, with over 1,200 scientific papers, 1,000 patents, 100+ licensing deals, and 25 spin-out companies. The first trait to note, he built a place where it is the expectation to reach beyond your discipline. It is at the intersection points of these disciplines that lies the answers to many real-world challenges. The inside outsider has been touted as the person that really has the ability to change an industry. This concept is not rare to all of you around here. As part of the success of a place like the Advanced Structures and Composites Center is the interdisciplinary focus of the mission and vision of the organization. And it is my belief that in the next 10 to 15 years, this trend will increasingly become the case, particularly as it relates to artificial intelligence and anything else, dermatology, music creation, journalism, drug discovery. And at MedRhythms, we actually think about this every day. We had a meeting on Friday to discuss one of the software engineers that we were going to hire, and we started listing qualifications. And we said, we wanted to hire someone who's full stack, who has expertise integrating with wearable technology, who understands biomechanics, specifically gait data, who knows the basics about music, who's a good writer, etc. Then we stopped ourselves and said, we're never going to find that person. But we do want someone that's really good at one of those things and he has ability to flex beyond their disciplines. The second point from the Langer excerpt, as we live in a world where boundaries blur, we all need a bias towards collaboration. Logically, it makes sense because unless you're a genius, then being able to know all the top research in multiple fields is impossible. Collaboration requires you build trust, ask questions, and leave the lab with a genuine curiosity for other areas. Today would have been an excellent example to walk around after you're adjudged, to ask questions of your fellow researchers, not to try to prove your discipline is smarter, but to curiously learn. Personally, when I think about the degree of collaboration necessary, it brings me back to a theory by business strategist Clay Christensen called the theory of interdependence and modularity. This theory focuses on the intersection points of disciplines. If the intersection points are good enough and understood to easily communicate the requirements necessary, then you'll get the results with really low collaboration. However, if the intersection points are undefined, not good enough, if you start by saying, well, this would be possible if I change X, Y, or Z, that is when you know you need to embed yourself in a collaborative team. And that is when you know you're onto something worth solving that really can make a big difference where some necessary breakthroughs could be. So as I speak today, you may be thinking these concepts don't apply to your situation. Or you may be thinking, okay, Owen, it's great to know excellence, but you don't believe you'll ever get there. You may think as a student you don't have enough experience to be helpful in a conversation. You may not believe in your ability. However, this simply isn't true. You have a great advantage being from the University of Maine. You've been given the opportunity to participate in research and encouraged by world-class professors, giving you confidence. You are capable. And take this from a small-town kid from Patten, Maine, who certainly has much more to be accomplished, but has stood firmly beside those that could be considered legends, and because of this place, have felt more than adequately prepared. So go forth. Know excellence. Commit to your process. Search the boundaries of disciplines. Collaborate with other like-minded people. And it's up to you to execute. And we need you. Society needs you, and the state needs you too. So I will leave you with the modified words of Dr. Wheeler. I expect the best from you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate your presentation. Thank you.